Welcome to the Portland Art Museum and the Brown Bag Lecture for November. I am so glad to see you all here, and I feel like I see a lot of faces that I haven't seen before, so this is your first time out. Welcome. I'm going to briefly tell you about the Photography Council. We are a group of people who love photography and help raise money for the museum to buy photographs. We do that through membership. It's $150 a year. It's a nice thing. You get to have access to some special activities we do. And just briefly, we have one coming up in December called the Print Share. It's a chance for everybody who does photography, who's a member of the council, to come together one night and have some food, have some alcohol, and look at all of our pictures. It's kind of, you walk around and display your work, and you look at your friends' work, and it's a super fun evening. So that's one of the things that we afford our members. The other thing we have going is at the end of January, we're planning a trip that's going to be, along with the curator of photography, Dr. Dolan, to San Francisco. We're going to tour a couple of photo shows, some private galleries, some private collections. It promises to be a really interesting and exciting viewing of photography, along with all the wonderful information that Julia Dolan can give you about what you're looking at. If it's for members only, there's a fee attached to it, of course. It's a fundraiser. If that's something that you're interested in, you can track me down after the talk, or you can talk to Cheryl Judd, our president, or even Julia. She'll be around here for a minute. So if that's something that sounds interesting and you'd like to attend, please do so. There's a mailing list you can sign up for in the back of the room, and that'll tell you even more about what we're doing. But for today we're here to hear a friend of mine, Austin Granger. And I, like a lot of people, first came across Austin's work on Flickr. He was kind of big on sharing his pictures there. And what I discovered very quickly is that Austin is an amazing photographer. He makes landscape photographs that I admire, and in some ways I envy them, and I just love looking at them. He's also a very prolific photographer. He seems to make photographs all the time. He's also a very private photographer. And I will confess that it took me about 2.5 years of cajoling him and asking him and wanting him to come speak here at the museum. And he was nervous, and he said, no. But now he's published a book, and he's decided to come out and tell us about his photography, what he thinks about while he's making it, and give us a rare view of this private photographer, Austin Granger. Welcome, Austin.
Wow, I've never spoken into a microphone before. This is strange. Thank you, Ray. I was joking with a friend of mine recently that I wasn't sure what would be worse, if no one showed up today or a lot of people showed up today. And this is worse. I'm very thankful. Obviously, a lot has happened in the past week, and a lot has been on all of our minds. And so I'm especially honored that you took the time, you carved out the time to come here today to be with me. I appreciate it very much. And I also want to thank the museum and the Arts Council and Ray Bittigan for first inviting me. I was joking just a second ago that whatever doesn't kill us makes us stronger, that I'm going to be really strong after this talk. So thank you again for coming. In a recent interview, the photographer William Eggleston remarked on the difficulty of talking about photography. Words and pictures, he said, are like two different animals. They don't particularly like each other. This is something I can relate to. When talking about my own photography, I often find that words fall short. No doubt this is because my understanding falls short. When I'm out making pictures, I am sure of what to do. But as to the why of it, that's the hard part. Often I think I understand, only to find later that my position has changed. I contradict myself. Sometimes I feel like the real answer is forever out of reach, that I'm like a dog chasing his tail. The camera leads me. Thinking about the why of it ties me in knots. How can I pretend to explain it? The philosopher Wittgenstein once wrote, "Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent." I actually considered taking Wittgenstein's advice and running the slideshow in silence, but then I thought that might be a little awkward. Please feel free, if you'd like, to focus on the pictures and let me recede into the background. I came to photography fairly late. I was in my mid-20s. I was in college. Before that, I'd spent 4 years in the Navy, living on board an aircraft carrier. And while I wouldn't take back that experience for anything, by the time my stint was up, I wanted to do something different. So I went to UC Santa Cruz to study philosophy. I lived by the beach. From my porch, I could hear the amusement park, the old wooden roller coaster. It was an idyllic time, though there were some hazards. For people like myself, prone to living in their heads, adopting thinking as a full-time profession can leave one feeling a little bit detached, like a deep-sea diver who has forgotten to come up for air, or a ghost still hanging around in the world, but barely. I don't remember why I first brought a camera on one of my walks, but something in me must have felt that it would become important, and it did. Carrying a camera was reason to start looking at things, really looking. A piece of driftwood, a length of kelp, a bird's skull, it didn't really matter. Bringing my attention round to bear on things quieted my mind, and it felt good and right. It felt like I'd found a bridge back to the world. It felt like a reunion. I'm sure I wouldn't have thought of it like this at the time, but looking back, I think I discovered that photography could be a kind of meditation, a practice. After graduation, I moved back to the San Francisco Bay Area where I'd grown up. I wrote a terrible novel. It was never published, thankfully, though I'll confess it wasn't for a lack of trying. In any case, soon enough, the money ran out. I couldn't find a job as a philosopher, so I had to humble myself. I went to work at a photo mini-lab called Arts 2001 Photo, which even in 1997 sounded a little dated. Arts was located on the outskirts of a mall parking lot next to the freeway. People would drive up and drop off their rolls of film so we could develop them and make prints and sift through their lives. It was like being a minor deity. Besides that, though, I liked it because it kept me connected to photography. It kept me thinking about photography all day long, and I was photographing more and more. My favorite place to roam was Point Reyes National Seashore, the triangular-shaped peninsula just north of San Francisco. Jutting way out into the ocean, Point Reyes is the edge of the continent. It's attached to the mainland, but barely. Beneath Tamales Bay, which forms most of Point Reyes' eastern boundary, lies the San Andreas Fault. In the great earthquake of 1906, it wasn't San Francisco, but Point Reyes that experienced the greatest geologic displacement. And the peninsula is still moving. Like some colossal ship, it steams northward at the stately pace of 2 inches per year. It is quite literally a place apart, and it feels it. It is widely believed that Point Reyes is the Plymouth Rock of the West, the place where Sir Francis Drake and his galleon, the Golden Hind, first landed. Drake's crew found the land to be grim and inhospitable. In his journal, the ship's chaplain, Francis Fletcher, wrote, "How unhandsome and deformed appeared the face of the earth itself, showing trees without leaves and the ground without greens." On the weather, Fletcher frequently complained of the nipping cold and the thick mists and the stinking fogs. Point Reyes is a solemn land. The coastal Miwok people who once lived there considered Point Reyes to be the abode of the dead. That seems about right to me. There is a feeling that overcomes those who wander there, as I have on innumerable days, that the peninsula stands somehow outside of everyday experience. It is otherworldly, that place, or rather, it seems neither here nor there, but someplace in between. It is a difficult thing to define. I know only that nowhere else on earth have I so strongly sensed the immanence of the Spirit, and I am not the only one. Study a map of Point Reyes, and the names of its features read as if from fiction, from myth, as if from some ancient allegory. Point Resistance, Mount Vision, Secret Beach. There is a tangible air of mystery that permeates Point Reyes as surely as its summer fogs. I often find that in attempting a description of the peninsula, ordinary adjectives fall short. And so I've come to say that Point Reyes is a terrible place. It is terrible in the awesome, forbidding, haunting, lonely, fearsome, and yes, beautiful way of the word terrible. Terrible with a capital T, terrible, I imagine, in the Old Testament sense. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an archaeologist. I had a book called The World's Last Mysteries, which described in great detail, with many pictures and illustrations, fabled lands like Easter Island and El Dorado and Stonehenge. Point Reyes seemed a place like that, a place with secrets to be discovered. I went there every chance I could. My camera was my passport and my purpose. I would go to this place to search for treasures, and I found them too. And in the process, I found something of myself as well. Point Reyes was teaching me how to photograph. Years passed. I bought a kayak to better explore the peninsula's many bays. I had adventures. I was attacked by an elephant seal. I was attacked by birds. I befriended sea lions. I got lost more times than I can count. I developed a relationship with the land. It became a part of my life, a part of my life story. It comforted me too. I went there the day after 9/11. I went there after my wife and I lost our first child just before he was born. Point Reyes gave me solace. In time, I decided that I wanted to make a book about it. I wanted to make an ode to this place that meant so much to me. It took a long time. I wanted to get it right. When it was done, I sent it out to some publishers and awaited their response. The responses were positive, beautiful, wonderful, captivating, even a future classic. Unfortunately, they couldn't publish it. They were more of a prose publisher, and there were so many pictures. They were more of a photo book publisher, and there were so many words. They didn't have the money. The Sierra Club told me they just shut down their publishing house. They told me my timing was bad. There's no getting around it. It was a tough defeat. I thought maybe if I persisted long enough, it would eventually get published, but the rejections were so hard. I put a lot of myself into the book, and I took it personally. I didn't have the strength for that, not again. So I put the book on my website, the whole thing, and I walked away. Life went on. I continued to photograph. My camera led me down innumerable roads. I moved to Oregon. My wife and I had 3 more children. More years passed. And then, not so long ago, just this year in fact, I received a phone call. It was the last publisher I'd sent the Point Reyes book to. I'd never heard back from them, and I'd forgotten all about it. They told me they were in the process of moving and were going through things, and they found a box with my manuscript in it. They said they liked it very much, and that they would like to publish it. And they did. That wasn't in my script. Thank you. We have a long way to go, actually. Thank you. If it was fate, then fate has a funny sense of humor. But it was all for the best. For after my surrender, I threw myself into my photography even more intensely than before. I redoubled my efforts without thought of a goal, at least not a professional one. I photographed more than ever for myself, and slowly, without my even realizing it, my pictures began to change. It wasn't a conscious choice, but more like I was riding on an invisible current. I wasn't aware of it until I stopped to look around and realized I was in a different place. I began to make pictures that were more about what wasn't shown. I started photographing evidence of something having happened, or perhaps something about to happen. I started leaving things out in the hope, I think, of letting you, the viewer, in. I began to look for what I think of now as stage sets or illustrations from a book that the viewer will help write. I started to make psychological pictures of people without people in the pictures. Who drives this truck? Who is sitting there? What is he thinking about? Who's Dave? What happened here last night? Who is the grave digger? Who is the tire guy? As I mentioned, when I was a boy, I wanted to be an archaeologist, and in a strange way, I think I am. More stage sets. Who shops or shopped at the Super Soul Shop? And how about here? What's behind that facade? Who captains this boat? Where do they come from? Where are they going? I like riddles too. Pictures like Zen koans. What is the sound of one hand clapping? What did your face look like before you were born? Why is there a fire hydrant in the middle of the forest? Somewhere along the way, I started to think that I might be able to express myself using external objects. I began to think that a subject could carry the weight of an emotion or an idea, even if that subject on the surface was not explicitly related to that emotion or idea. This is a tricky thing, but it's one of the most exciting challenges for me as a photographer. Can external objects correspond to internal conditions? Can photography be expressive, wildly expressive, without being self-absorbed or pretentious? Can I bridge the gap? Can I meet a stranger in the middle and connect, truly connect? Can I make a person feel what I feel? Can I dissolve the barrier? I've thought about this a lot, and my answer is sometimes. I know some tricks. Sometimes people ask me why I photograph in black and white, and I'm always a little taken aback by that question. It surprises me. I do photograph in black and white, don't I? I don't even think of it like that. They're just pictures. But don't you see in color, they say? And I say, of course I do, but I feel in black and white, but that's not quite right. What I mean is, as I make my way around in the world, color is not my primary impression. My primary impression of the world is a series of thoughts and feelings. And anyway, is that really the purpose of photography? To try and construct a faithful simulacrum of reality, some two-dimensional chemical echo? That's not how I think of it. For me, the subject of a picture is often not the subject pictured. I don't look at photographs as if I were looking through a window. Sometimes I think the ostensible subjects in my pictures have about as much to do with the real subjects as a toaster has to do with a porcupine. I hope that what I mean will become more clear as we go along. To return to the idea of tricks, I think that photographing in black and white for me is a kind of strategy. Black and white has certain strengths. What are we doing when we photograph in monochrome? What are we trying to show? Form, pattern, darkness, and light. We remove the skin to see the bones. But what else? I think that when we photograph in black and white, we're telegraphing something to the viewer. We're telling them that though our pictures obviously have a relationship with the subjects depicted, they are not solely about those subjects. For by using black and white, which is clearly an abstraction from reality, you're telling the viewer that what you're trying to convey is not simply an objective representation of the subject, but something else, something in between the subject, the viewer, and you. With black and white, our viewers are, I think, more apt to take a leap with us, a leap into the realm of feelings and ideas. As a photographer, this is the realm I want to be in. I feel like I should say here, and I actually wrote it down with a star just so I made sure to remember, that I love color photography. I really do. Some of my favorite photographers are color photographers, and some of them are in this room. I photographed in color myself for years. I'm just not sure it's where my strengths lie. It's not my mission. I've photographed a lot of fields. I feel peace in these spaces. They have a certain pull for me. For a long time, though, I was frustrated with my attempts to photograph them. The pictures never felt right. I tried a lot of different things. I'd fill the frame with the ground, with the sky just a sliver, or the opposite, a thin strip of horizon under a big blank sky. Nothing worked. But then, one day, I was standing in the middle of one of these fields, fuming that I could be defeated by something so simple, when suddenly a thought occurred to me. I'm not trying to photograph the fields. I'm trying to photograph what it feels like to stand in an empty field. It seems now like an obvious thing, but at the time it was a revelation, and one that made all the difference in the world. I leveled my camera and made the picture. By making my technique more transparent, I got myself out of the way, and the feeling shone through. I do this a lot now. I practice a deadpan, head-on kind of style, kind of like an artless art. Sometimes I think the more you show of yourself as a photographer, whether it's heavy filtration or intensive post-processing or wide-angle lens distortions or whatever, the more your viewer is likely to see you, the photographer, and not what you're trying to put across. I mean, if you fill your pictures up with yourself, you don't leave room for the viewer. You don't let them make the picture their own. Of course there are techniques, there are strategies, but a good photographer, I think, like a good magician, doesn't show you how he does his tricks. A good photographer makes you think that the picture you're looking at couldn't be any other way. I've come to think of composition not only as visual, but emotional as well. Compositions can make one feel. Say you find an old truck in an empty parking lot. Fill the frame, and what do you get? A picture of a truck. But step back 50 feet, 100 feet, how different it feels. And what's the picture of now? Is it still of a truck? Maybe the truck's you. Maybe the truck is I. Maybe the truck is anybody, a little boat on a big, dark sea. Another strategy I use is juxtaposition. See this man working away in an office. A meter keeps time, and the ladder, maybe it represents his professional ambitions. Maybe it's his escape route. Are these things really related? Through the power of composition, they are now. One of the great wonders of photography is that one can make 2 + 2 = 5. Many of you will remember these billboards. They recently sprung up all over Portland. I had a lot of fun tracking them down. Is Jesus the only way to God? Or can one get there with marijuana? Or maybe with one of Dave's used cars? Is Jesus the only way to God? Or could you use Federal Express? Sometimes I use juxtaposition over multiple images. I put pictures together, bounce them off each other to give them new meanings. This coyote made me sad, so I photographed it. Truth be told, I liked the way the center line ended at its head, and also the way those lines formed a 4 shape, a shape echoed in the limbs. On another day, I photographed this man sleeping in a field. I didn't have a thought of the coyote, at least not consciously. But when I later put the 2 pictures together, I saw that the man and the coyote were laying in almost exactly the same way. And it struck me that together, the pictures became about estrangement. The coyote, forced to navigate our highways and our barbed wire fences, is estranged from his ancestors' original paradise. The homeless man, ironically returned now to nature, is estranged from his society. Both have been struck down by forces beyond their control. Sometimes I like to hide things. My theory is that the more I hide, the more likely you'll be coaxed into participating in the making of the photo. And then the photo will become more personal to you. We'll meet halfway. What's behind that wall? What's behind that door? I'll tell you a secret. Behind that door is nothing. It's just a picture. Put more positively, behind that door is you. Your mind is behind that door. I'm often drawn to subjects which lack distinguishing characteristics. I like the generic. My theory is that the emptier a subject is, the greater the chance you'll see it as an idea, as a symbol. This door is any door. It's almost a platonic ideal of a door. It's just door or passage. And passage is universal. It means something to you. I want you to see what's in your mind. I want to make mirrors. They're all pictures of your head. They're all Rorschach tests, every last one. The writer Goethe once said, "A man sees in the world what he carries in his heart." It's the same with photographs. We bring all of ourselves to our looking at them. Oops, I lost one there. Who is this character, this dissident? Is this a ladder or a metaphor? A picture of an elephant or a picture about confinement? A lot of people, maybe most people, will see an elephant, and that's okay. It's not a wrong answer. Trying to operate on two levels at once doesn't always work. If there's one thing I've learned from sharing my stuff with people, it's that people often see the same pictures very differently. There are different sorts of people in the world. I certainly don't mean this to be a value judgment. There is no high or low here. But I think it's fair to say that some people are more literal-minded than others. Their relationship to the world is like that of two interlocked gears. They are grounded, and a picture of a tree is a picture of a tree. With other people, things are a bit more slippery. Things can be other things. The gears spin more freely. I bring this up because, depending on the viewer, sometimes pictures just don't translate the way I intend them. I have a test for you. Don't worry, it won't be graded. There isn't a wrong answer. Quick, what do you see? Do you see an old rusty car? Do you see a Volkswagen Bug? Or do you see a face? A face with eyes and a furrowed brow and a sneer in the mouth that says, "Psst, hey buddy, you gotta get me out of here." I thought this was a pretty good picture. I liked the cruel midday desert light, the road receding into the distance, the black shape of cow. To me, it felt like a serious picture, brutal but clear and strong, and not really about the cow. The cow is me, it's you, it's everyone. This is a picture about death, not just the cow's death, but death. I thought it was a good picture, and I worked on it for a long time. I worked hard to get it just right. I readied it to share with people on the computer. Man, I thought, this is going to bust their brains out. This is going to make them weep. And then I sent it out into the world. Shortly, my computer dinged at me, letting me know someone had seen it and had commented. It was a girl I knew from high school, Karen. She wrote, "Boy, you wouldn't want to poke that thing with a stick." Smiley face. Smiley face. Smiley face. What can you do? I follow an inner compass. I don't really know what it is I'm looking for when I'm photographing, but I know it when I see it. When I'm photographing well, I have the uncanny sense that the photographs are already there, just waiting for me. They feel predestined. I quiet myself and they appear. It's almost like listening. It's passive like that. I put up my antenna and wait. I recognize the picture right away. I recognize how it feels. When it's going well, it's easy. And I don't have any doubt about either the subject or how it should look, which is why I'm completely immune to criticism. I joke, but really, who would know better than I what I should be photographing and how I should be photographing it? They're my pictures. I recognize them. I know them. They're like the pieces of a puzzle. I may not know quite what the puzzle is of, but I know which pieces belong to it. because they're charged, they're significant. Sometimes I feel like I'm collecting archetypes or cards from some sort of cosmic tarot card pack. I see the same symbols over and over. Decay means time and change. Birds are freedom, or sometimes foreboding. Telephone poles are religious yearnings. Tracks are history or destiny. Looming figures are sadness and fear or death. Illumination is illumination in the spiritual sense. It's understanding. It's love. See, I'm the shrub. The thing that nags at me, though, the question that comes in the middle of the night is this: am I collecting or am I projecting? I used to think the former, but now I'm not so sure. Maybe all those pictures that seem so predestined, just out there waiting for me, those pictures that seem to speak my name, that feel like clues, maybe they're all just the ephemeral projections of my own psyche. Maybe I could roam the whole world, searching and searching, but in the end, all I'd find are my own desires, my own brain, alone in a hall of mirrors. Maybe I'm stuck. Am I deciphering the map, or am I the map maker? Am I solving the puzzle, or creating the puzzle? Does one pray because God is up there, or is God up there because one prays? Why do we photograph? Are we recording our story? Or are we writing our story? I don't know. When I'm traveling with my children and they ask me if we're there yet, I always say, kids, and I say it with that kind of voice, kids, the journey is the destination. They hate that. I think it does contain some truth. Maybe in the grand scheme of things, in both photography and life, there's really nowhere to get to. Maybe the questions are part of the answer. Maybe the meaning's in the doing. Maybe that's okay. I thought that kudzu looked like praying hands. The billboard offers nothing. This is in Mississippi, out on Highway 61. Some people think that this is the crossroads where bluesman Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil in return for mastering his guitar. I've always thought that story was a metaphor. If you give yourself to something, if you let it take you over, you will gain powers at a price. I'm no master, but I put a lot into my photography. It dominates my life. I'd like to think that I'm getting better, that I'm ripening. I'm doing the best I can. Sometimes people find my pictures sad or lonely, and I can't deny there's some truth to that. If you couldn't tell already, I am familiar with what Winston Churchill called the black dog of depression. Photographing keeps me just ahead of my hellhounds. Sometimes I think that by pinning my interior troubles to things in the world, I can transcend those troubles, or at least try and understand them better. To give shape is to control. Sometimes I hit dead ends, but I find some signposts too. some wonderful things, so many lights and keepsakes. I can't claim to understand it all. As I warned you in the beginning, often it seems the camera leads me. I can tell you this. Though my pictures may look sad, I am seldom happier than when I am making them. When I'm out photographing, all the questions disappear, and it is then that I feel most alive. It is then that I feel most like myself. I think that's some kind of grace. Thank you. Oh my God. That went by a lot faster than I had planned, and I'm sorry for just staring here reading, but I was so nervous that I held on to my anchor. I'd be happy to take a few questions, but first, if you'll allow me, I just wanted to put in a couple of quick plugs. The Point Reyes book is indeed out. I saw it at Powell's the other day, as a matter of fact. One copy of Powell. It contains 83 photographs and a collection of essays about the peninsula and everything else. I actually brought a few signed copies if you're interested. They're $30. Might make a good gift. If you don't have $30, you can take one and pay me later. I trust you. So, and the second thing I wanted to quickly talk about was that my friend Paul Cunningham and I have collaborated on making a series of beautiful handmade platinum prints of some of my Point Reyes photographs. So if you're interested in something for your wall, please feel free to take a postcard in the back of the room and check out the prints, or drop Paul or I a line, and we can be happy to talk to you about that. So that's it. Thank you very much again. Does anyone have any questions for me? Ray in the back.
So Austin, for the Point Reyes pictures, I know that was far away from your house, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. About an hour and a half.
So how often did you go out there?
Well, I went there every weekend, and then every chance I could for about 10 years until we moved up to Portland. So, yeah, about 10 years. So, I didn't talk anything about cameras or film or anything. I had so much more I was going to touch on, but I was afraid that we'd run over. So, if you have any questions, I'm an open book. I don't have any secrets. About f/32, if I'm using my view camera. I do use film. I didn't bring it up because honestly I'm not too interested in the whole film versus digital debate. You know, my philosophy is there's a lot of different paths up the same mountain, and I could care less what people use. I like film cameras because they do what I want, and they make me happy to use them. I find comfort in the old rituals. But it wasn't really a conscious choice. When I started photographing in the mid-90s, digital cameras weren't where they are today, and so I started using film cameras. And then when digital came along, I was so immersed in what I was doing, I hardly even noticed it, truthfully. And I don't feel the need to change now. I like my tools, and like I said, I like the old rituals. You know, I like finishing a roll of film and sticking it in my pocket of my camera, and I like going under the dark cloth of my view camera, and I kind of like not knowing exactly what I have, because even after 20 years of photographing, I'm still surprised frequently. And so it's like having a childhood Christmas a couple times a week. You know, I go, wow, look at that. And I still only probably have two. I'm just rambling on here. I probably still only have 2 pictures out of a roll of 12 that work, that I'll pursue further. And I kind of like that. So, yeah. But again, I think of all the attributes that make a good picture, what kind of camera you use or what kind of film is not even in the top 10. It's just not even on the list. I mean, obviously it has some effect on your pictures, but it doesn't make a picture good or bad. I think an idea or just having a heart makes pictures good or bad. Anyway, that's more than I wanted to say, I was planning to say, but any other pictures? Pete, anything? Anybody?
Yeah, I noticed some, what looked to me like tinting. Is that just a product of the projection system or projector?
Yeah, the projector, honestly, these are a little bluer than my final prints usually are. I usually kind of go for a little bit of a warm tone. I don't want to go too far because I don't want it to look kind of old-timey, but a little warmer. There's some prints in the back that would kind of give you an idea of what the final prints would look like. So, yeah. Anything else? Sure. Yeah, hi.
Speaking of color, that one photo of the side of a building or wall, which was peeling off, that seemed to be very strong yellow. That's still
I didn't even look.
It looked like a plan though, because it was so perfectly superimposed. I'm like, oh, the yellow paint's.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, honestly, I didn't even look up once I started reading. But usually, I try to keep things kind of uniform, and they're just a little bit of a warm kind of gold, brown color.
I can address that sort of overall. All the images were completely black and white. So any of the yellow tinting you saw, I think they probably don't think you should have gotten them. I did notice that wall as well. It was pretty cool.
It's like something you might have in the dark room sometime.
Oh, really? No, I didn't look at that.
It looked very deliberate.
Oh, no, wow.
And the one after that had yellow.
I'm kind of glad I didn't notice because I would have freaked out. Yeah, do you have a question?
I do. I really super appreciated your words. I think it's really fun to talk about
Thank you.
our artwork, as artists. And I'm wondering if you could make those available, make what you read to us available.
Sure. Somebody
I'd
talked.
love to read through that.
Yeah, I had the idea of maybe kind of redoing this and then putting it out on, I don't know, YouTube or wherever. So if you, yeah, so, okay. Thanks, I'll do that. And speaking of which, if you want to see the pictures at your own pace and thousands more, you can go to my website, or Flickr is a place that I put everything because I kind of use it to organize projects. And I have a couple more books that I'm working on, so you can see them in the order that I tried. And you can see some color stuff if you want. I photographed in Astoria. I lived in Astoria for 2 years, and I photographed there for 2 years, so in color, all color, as I was kind of writing the Point Reyes book, actually. So,
Can you put the text of this up on your website?
yeah, I'll think about that. Right, I was just thinking about this for so long. I'm just going to get through this, and then I want to go back and photograph again, because it's kind of, when Ray invited me about 4 months ago, I was like, okay, because it seems so far off. And then it sort of just was always in the back of my mind, like just churning there.
I can imagine a looming terror.
It was a looming terror, for sure. And it's such a relief. And you've all been very kind, too. I was trying to tell myself, like, well, they're not going to be a hostile audience. But it was actually the other extreme. It was really nice. So thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
With your philosophical kind of background, or at least the place that you're coming from, it feels, this is me projecting.
Yeah.
It feels like you might be someone who would move toward the abstract as you went on, but it doesn't seem like that's happening. Can you talk about that?
As far as like abstract subject matter, I have thought about that actually, and it seems to be a way that a lot of photographers do go. But I kind of, my first answer off the top of my head is that I kind of treat things that way, even if they're representative subjects. Like once I've identified something, and then it immediately becomes just sort of forms and shapes, and I just structure it. It's almost like if you were to take a picture and draw it on a napkin, just using quick 3 lines, that's how I think of it. I'm sort of distanced from it. And also I would say that they're abstract in the sense that, as I kind of try to touch on, that I see the subjects as just kind of bearing the weight of an idea or a feeling that might not be the thing shown. So when I see something, I don't immediately see what it is, like say the elephant. I understand how people would say the poor elephant, and I sympathize with that point of view, I do. But when I saw the elephant, I didn't think the poor elephant. It was more about kind of a human condition of maybe being trapped or isolated. And so in that way, I don't know if this is kind of a really roundabout way of answering your question, but that it's sort of abstracted from what I'm showing. But I do like abstract pictures too. I do that sometimes. Yes, sir.
Your presentation was wonderful. I thought
Thank
the
you.
words coupled with your photos just added so much.
Thanks.
I'm interested in, when I view your photos, they definitely speak to me, and I understand them in a deeper sense than how they speak to you from your words. And I'd like to know a little bit about your approach to finding a scene and how you draw out feeling from that scene. For example, some of the landscape scenes, the lighting really was spectacular. The sky was spectacular. How many times are you going back to that place? How are you bringing out the feelings that you're projecting in your film?
Man, that's a big question. Thank you, by the way. You saying that your pictures, you related to them, it means a lot. I mean, it's the best thing that anyone can ever say to me, so thank you. As far as finding stuff, it's a tricky thing. As I mentioned, it often feels almost predestined. Like I don't go around expecting to find something. It's almost like sounding, like in the nautical sense. I sort of sounding, and I walk around, and I have no preconceptions of what I'm going to find. And then the thing that makes me feel something is the photograph. So I'm not going out there like thinking I'm going to photograph an old ruined car or whatever. But old ruined cars, ruins, they make me feel something. And so I tend to photograph them a lot. But sometimes stuff surprises me, and I don't even know why I photographed it until later. And then I'll go back and say like, wow, what is that about? Why did I photograph that? But in regards to your question about going back to places over and over again, I definitely do that. I'm really stubborn. Sometimes I'll go back to the same place over and over and over again until I get it right. And sometimes I'll just give up, and it won't work. One thing, if a subject is too complex, if I can't structure it in some way, like to make it clear, I'll give up. I won't photograph that. It's just not a photograph for me. I like things, like everything in the picture for me needs to work to highlight the message that I'm trying to get across. So I have trouble in cities sometimes because they're so chaotic. There's so much going on that it's hard to juggle everything. For me, I just tend towards simple compositions. But as for the light, I'll go back to a place over and over again until I get it right. I like to photograph when it's overcast and kind of gloomy. I sort of enjoy dramatic weather. I enjoy dark skies, brooding weather. I love the winter for photography. The summer just really brings me down. Well, I go out and there's just these bright, beautiful blue skies, but all the harsh shadows, and it's hard to deal with it. I hope my answer was in there somewhere. Yeah. I must have gone really fast. Any more questions? Lauren.
Just to follow up to Reyes' question, how often do you get out now to photograph during the week or a month? How many weeks?
as much as I'd like, for sure. And it drives me insane. You know, I feel very like I'm on a leash. You know, like I just want to break out, and I love to just go anywhere. And sometimes I'll just drive to a neighborhood and park the car and just wander around. I think that really helped me as a photographer to, you know, have no preconceptions of a place and just park and go and walk and walk and walk. And I find that it takes a couple of hours a lot of times to kind of start seeing things and for all the thoughts, you know, that are always running around in our minds to finally kind of settle, and then you start seeing things. But to answer your question, yeah, not enough. I try to get out once a week, but I would like for it to be a lot more. I could photograph every day, all day long, but I have 3 kids, and I have to try to bring in some money, so it's a hard thing to do. So, yeah.
Thank you, Austin.
Thanks, Ray. Thank you.